Chapter 12 of A Short Life of Abraham Lincoln. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alana Jordan. A Short Life of Abraham Lincoln by John G. Nicolay. Chapter 12. Lincoln's Cabinet Program. Members from the South. Questions and Answers. Correspondence with Stevens. Action of Congress. Peace Convention. Preparation of the Inaugural. Lincoln's Farewell Address. The Journey to Washington. Lincoln's Midnight Journey. During the long presidential campaign of 1860, between the Chicago Convention in the middle of May and the election at the beginning of November, Mr. Lincoln, relieved from all other duties, had watched political developments with very close attention, not merely to discern the progress of his own chances, but doubtless also, much more seriously, to deliberate upon the future in case he should be elected. But it was only when, on the night of November 6, he sat in the telegraph office at Springfield, from which all but himself and the operators were excluded, and read the telegrams as they fell from the wires, that little by little the accumulating Republic majorities reported from all directions convinced him of the certainty of his success, and with that conviction there fell upon him the overwhelming, almost crushing weight of his coming duties and responsibilities. He afterward related that in that supreme hour, grappling resolutely with the mighty problem before him, he practically completed the first essential act of his administration, the selection of his future cabinet, the choice of men who were to aid him. From what afterward occurred, we may easily infer the general principle which guided his choice. One of his strongest characteristics, as his speeches abundantly show, was his belief in the power of public opinion and his respect for the popular will. That was to be found and to be wielded by the leaders of public sentiment. In the present instance, there were no truer representatives of that will than the men who had been prominently supported by the delegates to the Chicago Convention for the presidential nominations. Of these, he would take at least 3, perhaps 4, to compose one half of his cabinet. In selecting Seward, Chase, Bates, and Cameron, he could also satisfy 2 other points of the representative principle: the claims of locality and the elements of former party divisions now joined in the newly organized Republican party. With Seward from New York, Cameron from Pennsylvania, Chase from Ohio, and himself from Illinois, the 4 leading free states each had a representative. With Bates from Missouri, the South could not complain of being wholly excluded from the cabinet. New England was properly represented by Vice President Hamlin. When, after the inauguration, Smith from Indiana, Wells from Connecticut, and Blair from Maryland were added to make up the 7 cabinet members, the local distribution between East and West, North and South, was in no wise disturbed. It was indeed complained that in this arrangement there were 4 former Democrats and only 3 former Whigs, to which Lincoln laughingly replied that he had been a Whig and would be there to make the number even. It was not likely that this exact list was in Lincoln's mind on the night of the November election, but only the principal names in it, and much delay and some friction occurred before its completion. The post of Secretary of State was offered to Seward on December 8. "Rumors have got into the newspapers," wrote Lincoln, "to the effect that the department named above would be tendered you as a compliment, and with the expectation that you would decline it. I beg you to be assured that I have said nothing to justify these rumors, On the contrary, it has been my purpose, from the day of the nomination at Chicago, to assign you, by your leave, this place in the administration." Seward asked for a few days for reflection, then cordially accepted. Bates was tendered the Attorney Generalship on December 15, while making a personal visit to Springfield. Word had been meanwhile sent to Smith that he would probably be included. The assignment of places to Chase and Cameron worked less smoothly. Lincoln wrote Cameron a note on January 3, saying he would nominate him for either Secretary of the Treasury or Secretary of War. He had not yet decided which, and on the same day, in an interview with Chase, whom he had invited to Springfield, said to him: "I have done with you what I would not perhaps have ventured to do with any other man in the country, sent for you to ask whether you will accept the appointment of Secretary of the Treasury, without, however, being exactly prepared to offer it to you." They discussed the situation very fully, but without reaching a definite conclusion, agreeing to await the advice of friends. Meanwhile, the rumor that Cameron was going to go into the cabinet excited such hot opposition that Lincoln felt obliged to recall his tender in a confidential letter, and asked him to write a public letter declining the place. Instead of doing this, Cameron fortified himself with recommendations from prominent Pennsylvanians, and demonstrated that in his own State he had at least 3 advocates to 1 opponent. Pending the delay which this contest consumed, another cabinet complication found its solution. It had been warmly urged by conservatives that, in addition to Bates, another cabinet member should be taken from one of the Southern States. The difficulty of doing this had been clearly foreshadowed by Mr. Lincoln in a little editorial which he wrote for the Springfield Journal on December 12. First, is it known that any such gentleman of character would accept a place in the cabinet? Second, if yea, on what terms does he surrender to Mr. Lincoln, or Mr. Lincoln to him, on the political differences between them, or do they enter upon the administration in open opposition to each other? It was very soon demonstrated that these differences were insurmountable. Through Mr. Seward, who was attending his senatorial duties at Washington, Mr. Lincoln tentatively offered a cabinet appointment successively to Gilmer of North Carolina, Hunt of Louisiana, and Scott of Virginia, no one of whom had the courage to accept. Toward the end of the recent canvass, and still more since the election, Mr. Lincoln had received urgent letters to make some public declaration to reassure and pacify the South, especially the Cotton States, which were manifesting a constantly growing spirit of rebellion. Most of such letters remained unanswered, but in a number of strictly confidential replies he explained the reasons for his refusal. "I appreciate your motive," he wrote October 23, "when you suggest the propriety of my writing for the public something disclaiming all intention to interfere with slaves or slavery in the States; but, in my judgment, it would do no good. I have already done this many, many times, and it is in print, and open to all who will read. But those who will not read or heed what I have already publicly said would not read or heed a repetition of it. If they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded through one rose from the dead." To the letter of the Louisville Journal he wrote October 29, "For the good men of the South, and I regard the majority of them as such, I have no objection to repeat 77 times. But I have had bad men to deal with, both North and South, who are eager for something new upon which to base new misrepresentations, men who would like to frighten me, or at least to fix upon me the character of timidity and cowardice." Alexander H. Stephens of Georgia, who afterward became Confederate Vice President, made a strong speech against secession in that